Hi everyone. So this is Prakriti and I hope you all are doing well. So before starting this video, I want to give you an instruction, and that is if you survive my broken English throughout this video, then you will definitely get something out of it, something meaningful out of it. Okay. So first of all, I want to ask you a simple question that are you kind of a person who is always interested, who is always curious to know about famous personality? Are you that kind of a person? If yes, then this is the same case with me. I am kind of a person who is very curious about knowing different personalities, their life journey, how they became what they are right now, how they became like this, what is the thinking process behind their career, how they think, how they evolve throughout their life, how they struggle, you know what was the lowest point in their life, what was the how they handle stress. These all are things which I am always interested to read about. So why I am discussing this today, because I was reading about a very famous personality. Basically he was a songwriter, and his name is Leonard Norman Cohen. I am not here to discuss his life journey. I'm just sharing my experience, what I have noticed about him, and what surprised me the most after reading their life journey. Okay, and my habit is to think, you know, to search those things which is the core personality traits. I'm always curious about these things. What is the inner mechanism of that person so that he became what he is right now? What is the inner core values, or what the driving force so that a person became that person who is famous, who is successful? What is the thinking process behind this? And I'm very curious about these things. I'm not interested in the chronology of their life years. I'm not interested in these kind of thing. I'm very interested to know about their mind, how they evolve, how they struggle, how they fight in the lowest time. These are all things which surprise me the most. And this person which I'm talking about is Norman Cohen, is a basically songwriter. And what surprised me the most about him, that please listen to me very carefully. He is going through different contradictory emotions in his life. He has he is full of contradictory emotions, and his song also reflect those contradictory emotions, you know but he can manage both kind of emotion. By saying contradictory emotion, I can explain it. In his songs, I basically, when I read about him, so I thought, why not listen some music which he has written or he has sung also. So I go to the YouTube and search Norman Cohen, Leonard Cohen, anything. And then I found his very famous song Hallelujah karke, and the second most famous song is Dance With Me Till the End of Love. And when I listen this song, I completely, I first thing I liked most that song. I like it very much. And the very second idea come in my mind that he is a very romantic person. That song is full of, love, romance, sexuality, everything is there in that song. But music is also very good. So I have that, this perception in my mind that he must is, he is definitely a very romantic person. His writing is inspired by romance. I just think like this. But when I read about him, then I get this, information. He himself, speak to in an interview that that song which I listen and I feel very, romantic song. I feel it very romantic. That song was literally inspired by an, death moment. Can you imagine? Basically, that song was inspired by the Holocaust. During Holocaust, you can read about it. Basically, Nazis were trying to kill millions of peoples, millions of Yahudis in after Second World War. During Second World War, maybe I'm not. You can read about that. So that song was inspired by one of its image. During Holocaust, prisoners were, forced to sing the music in front of, death scene. In front of them, people are, killing. Nazis were killing peoples, and some person in front of that, some musicians were forced to sing music in front of this, and these all things were captured in an image, and uh, Cohen was inspired through that image. I cut it short. This is not required here. Basically, I am trying to say here is that a person can, feel contradictory emotions and still he can do well in his life. We always assume that spirituality and sexuality will not coexist. We also assume that love and death cannot coexist. We also assume that anxiety and creative work will not coexist. But all this myth uh, has broken down right now, for me at least, when I read about him, because he is kind of a person full of these kind of opposite emotions. You know, he talk about romance, love at the same time, and that and opposite side, he is very much involved in spirituality. He's a very spiritual person. He is Yahudi, by the way, and in his later life, he also followed, uh, Buddhism also, Jain Buddhism also. And he suffered a lot from anxiety and stress during his life. He mentioned in his interviews. But at the same time, the best work comes when he was suffering from anxiety, depression. Then he make his one of the best, you can say it masterpiece. So anxiety and creative is still coexist. Love and death scene can still coexist, because that song I'm talking about, dance till the end of love, dance with me till the end of love, is, you know you can see that that is a romantic song, but that romantic song is inspired by a death scene. This opposite emotions can coexist, and one person can feel it, can feel all both of them very deeply, and still he can do well in his life. And little bit about his life, that his life is not a very linear process. Initially, he was not a songwriter at all. He was not interested in singing or writing anything, songwriting anything. He was basically starting in his 20s. He was basically a writer. He write things, and he wrote books also. But in his 30s and 40s, he, exposed to the singing, or uh, uh, basically songwriting and music also. And one incident also inspired me, that in his 70s, he was almost completely, you can say it, bankrupt. Basically, his manager governed him, and he left with no money at all. A very few little money. Then he also started his second inning, you can say it, and started performing in front of the public, in his 70s. He is traveling around the world, and he is singing in front of the group of people, and his best work comes in his later period of his life. So here in this video, most important thing is, I think that you might feel very confusing, but as I told you in the very early of my video, that if you survive my broken English throughout this video, then you will definitely get something out of it, something meaningful out of it. And that meaningful part is basically contradictory emotions can coexist and still people can do well in his life. When we think about spirituality, we think that, oh, is spirituality only happen there when people is less human, physical world is not involved in spirituality. When a person becomes spiritual, then he has to forget the normal human life. We all think like this, but this is not the case. Both things can still happen. We also felt love, fall in love in our life, but does it mean that we are not spiritual at all? This is not the case. Okay, we also suffer anxiety, stress in our life, but does that mean that during those period we we forget about the work and just rest in our room, or just feel darkness around us? No, this is not the case. During this stress, anxiety, anything which you are struggling right now, don't make the hurdle in your life. Don't make those things hurdle in your life, because after reading his life, I can at least say this, that if he can do this, then we can also. We both have we all have very all of emotions. We can feel that, the darkness, love, spirituality, anxiety, creativity, all of things can coexist. That's what I want to say here. So at least I think that we don't have to define, we don't have to draw a line between these things. Okay, if a person is spiritual, then he is not involved in, he must have not involved in the normal human life. No, this is not the case. And this is also true, that if a person talks about mortality, death, darkness, if one side of mind is thinking about these things, then he is not he cannot talk about love, life, growth. So both of things can still coexist, and still that person can do well in his life. And this is the live example that that the personality I was talking about, uh, Leonard Norman Cohen, basically. You can read about him. But my purpose is not to discuss like journey here. I was just talking about this contradictory human emotion. I hope you get my point. And if not, you can ask me in the comment box. I will try to explain much better in my next video. And I also, request you all to, comment in the comment box. What kind of, personality are you reading in these days? And what confusion or what struggles you are facing right now? You can write in the comment box if you are comfortable. And we will discuss, we will try to understand that in my next video. Thank you so much. This is all about it. We will meet in our next video. Bye.